The current megatrends, namely the digital and green transitions, have the capacity to significantly alter the landscape and reshape the dynamics of the labour market. Conventional job roles may face obsolescence, giving way to the emergence of new occupations, emphasising the increasing importance of lifelong learning and the acquisition of new skills throughout one's professional career. Continue with a quick quiz question. Based on these trends, what percentage of jobs worldwide do you think will undergo radical change as individual tasks are automated in the next decade? A. 8%. B. 32%. C. 21%. D. 13%. The right answer is B. In the Future of Work Employment Outlook report, the OECD estimates that 14% of existing jobs could vanish due to automation in the next 15 to 20 years, while another 32% are set to undergo radical changes as individual tasks are automated. That's almost 1.1 billion jobs worldwide that are liable to be transformed by technology in the next decade. The future is here, and we have a lot of questions. What skills are essential for success in the years ahead? How can we reskill and upskill the current workforce to meet the demands of tomorrow? Join us today as we explore viable strategies and good practices to equip emerging Eurasian labour markets for the challenges and opportunities of the future. Transition through education. How to design the future of work and education now.
Dear audience, welcome again at the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2023. After the remarkable panel discussion on multilateral cooperation, we are now moving to our last thematic session with education in its center. The panel is titled Transition Through Education: How to Design the Future of Work and Education Now. Our distinguished speakers will discuss how the characteristics of the education and training system can provide the in-demand skills and knowledge for the future of work, and how educational institutions and employers can be improved to achieve this. As the panel will start with a fireside chat, let me please invite the moderator, Mr. Levente, HORVÁTH, Director of Eurasia Center, John Foy Neumann University. Mr. HORVÁTH, it is a pleasure to have you. Now I give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody in the last panel of the Eurasia Forum. I think this is the most important panel because it is about the education. We were talking a lot about the geopolitics, the technology, the internet, the multilateral cooperations, but it's all of them based on the education. So now we will have a fireside chat in this cold Hungary. The winter is coming, as we see, and we heard in the geopolitical sections too. Then it is a great honor that I can introduce to you my partner, my fireside partner, Vice President ZHANG. Professor Renhe ZHANG is the Vice President of the Fudan University, and as I am a Fudan alumni, I'm very honored that I could have this discussion today with him. He also serves as Dean of the Graduate School from Fudan University, and before he has been also the leading scientist for more than 20 research projects on national and ministerial levels in China. So now it is my pleasure to greet Professor Zhang Renhe, Vice President of the Fudan University, and welcome on the stage. Thank you very much, and welcome on the stage again. We know that we are talking about the Eurasia, and in the past decades, we realized that more and more Asian universities became coming to the top 100 universities. And from the university side, I would like to ask, so what do you see as the most exciting innovation or technologies that are shaping the future of education? And how do they inspire you or your colleagues in Fudan University or in China or in Asian universities? Because, yes, the education is most important for the future. So what is your idea about this?
Thank you for your question. In my view, AI is the artificial intelligence. AI is a strategic technology and steers a new round of global scientific and technological revolution and industrial transformation. In recent years, AI technology has been introduced into scientific research. It effectively combines data science and computational intelligence, helping us to explore the laws of science and promote the development of basic sciences, and as a result, changes the paradigm of scientific research. Fudan University has been proactively promoting the basic research and industrial application of AI for science. This June, the Computing for the Future at Fudan, the largest ever cloud computing platform among Chinese universities, was launched. This supercomputer was jointly built by Fudan University, China Telecom, and Alibaba Cloud to discover and solve complex problems in scientific research. Let me give you an example. I myself is an atmospheric scientist. To ensure a good weather for our outdoor opening ceremony this semester, Fudan University took advantage of the supercomputer to train a large meteorological model with 4.5 billion parameters. It took only 3 seconds to forecast the global weather for the next 15 days and confirmed that the opening day won't be a rainy day. The meteorological model was named after Fuxi, the ancestor of mankind in ancient Chinese mythology. It is said he used the 8 trigram, a Chinese philosophical theory to forecast weather. What's more, Fudan University also applies AI technology to a wide range of occasions, such as our education and teaching, campus management, and so on. In terms of teaching contents, we provided courses on big data and AI to students majoring in science and technology to equip them with stronger innovation ability in practice and help them adapt to industry well. We provided basic knowledge of data science and AI to students majoring in liberal arts to enhance their capability in dealing with data analysis, machine learning, and natural language processing, and even generative AI. Ethics education in science and technology is also available to students to meet the real need of adapting themselves to the development of scientific and technological innovation. As for the teaching method, new technologies include AI and virtual simulation have been extensively introduced as a crucial teaching tool. We have also set up a series of cutting-edge teaching labs dedicated to AI, VR, AR, and machine vision. Fudan University has launched more than 40 teaching projects on virtual simulation experiments. When it comes to the supporting service, we analyze the existing teaching resources through AI to refine key knowledge points in order to make the resources truly serve education and teaching. In short, AI technology could be found in many aspects of Fudan University's work, helping the university in its teaching, scientific research, and campus services. Thank you.
So you were mentioning the AI, and also you mentioned the Chinese ancient culture and knowledge, the Fuxi. And it is very interesting that the new, the modern, the future knowledge and technology can be fusion with the ancient knowledge. So according to this, I also would like to ask, because you have mentioned the future educational technologies and innovations, but in the university sectors, not only in Fudan University, but also in the world, what could you suggest for an academic directions and disciplines so you could recommend to the students, even given the ever-changing nature of emerging industries? So could you share your insight about this with us? So which are the promising sectors in today's global economy?
Yes. Very interesting question. As you mentioned, the change is everlasting, so it's hard to say if there will be an emerging industry to replace the old ones. There is no such thing as a discipline that is always popular. Considering Shanghai, the city where Fudan is located in, is building a science and technology innovation center with influence around the world. I think Fudan's strong disciplines such as AI, biomedicine, integrated circuits, and nanotechnology are all leading industries Shanghai will develop with great resources.
Yes, and as we navigate in the fierce competition for youth in the job market, I'm interested to understand the strategic initiatives of Fudan University, what is undertaking to equip students with the skills and adaptability needed for the evolving landscape of work. So how does Fudan ensure that its curriculum and programs align with the demands? So as the Fudan University is one of the best universities, and most of the Chinese students would like to participate in the Fudan education. So how can you ensure that the programs will help the students to can get better works or jobs in the changing future job market?
Yeah. Yes, we are always concerned about the employment of our students, because this is a proof of the market's recognition of the effectiveness of our training. Adhering to the core vision of lifelong learning and practice for global competence, Fudan University provides students with career education programs. Over the past 5 years, we have offered courses such as career planning, career guidance, and the introduction to entrepreneurship for college students, which help students to establish a correct outlook on career choice and employment, and encourage them to plan for their future development rationally. Each faculty offers a number of career vocational courses according to the characteristics of their disciplines to realize the close integration between career education and the development of discipline specialties and industry, including biotechnology, information science and technology, medicine, pharmacy, law, material science, and even nuclear physics. By focusing on the development prospects of practical application and potential feasible career development of their majors, the faculty not only enhance students' love for their major and confidence in their studies, but also provide students with effective and industry academic integrated guidance on career development. Traditionally, we learn from teachers and books while sitting in a classroom. Because of transformation in emerging technology, in the future, we can also learn from our peers and computers. Most importantly, there will be an atmosphere of lifelong learning. There is a Chinese proverb that says, when I walk along with two others, they may serve me as my teachers. In the future, everyone could be the transmitter and the receiver of knowledge. Of course, as the new technology cannot completely replace the traditional way of learning, MOOC courses also cannot completely replace the university courses in the classroom. The relationship between the MOOC and the courses in a real classroom is like that between watching a movie and living your own life, in which the real experience of individuals is different.
Thank you, and we only left 1 minute, so last question, and please answer shortly. That, as I have mentioned, the Asian universities are coming up, and in the top 100 universities there are more and more, not only Chinese, but Korean, Japanese, and other Asian universities. So what is the strategy for Fudan University to remain competitive, like not just between Eurasian universities, but in global labor markets too? So how can they be at the top 50 university, and what is the strategy for them?
Yeah, although Fudan University has never believed in judging a university according to its ranking, the university ranking list is a matter of great concern to the society, employers, students, and parents. Fudan University is ranking in both QS and THE. List has stabilized in recent years with no significant increase or decrease, reflecting the university's comprehensive strength as a stable level. And I think there are 3 initiatives that are important for Fudan University to enhance its comprehensive strength and maintain its competitiveness in the world. First, the importance of the talents. The country is founded on talents, and the industry is built on talents. For colleges and universities, talents is not only the primary resource and cost advantage, but also the significance and the value of running a school. And the second adhere to the strategy of internationalization, which also answers your second question. Fudan has signed cooperation agreements with more than 400 universities and research institutes in the world and maintains a friendly and cooperative relations with them. And also, I will go quickly. And the third, develop long-term plans, just as the Chinese government is very far-sighted and formulates long-term plans every 5 years. Fudan University and other educational institutions in China also need to formulate our own 5-year development plans. Therefore, we will lay out major development directions and implementation key projects, and then mobilize the entire university to implementation them. And so the 3 points mentioned above, namely talent internationalization and the development of long-term plans, are the 3 areas in which Fudan University maintains its competitiveness.
Thank you. So the international relation is very important, the networking, the cooperation. So the Eurasia Forum is also a platform for the cooperation in every field between the countries. So, and also I would like to mention again the education. I think is one of the most important of this whole discussion, because this is shaping the future and it can help us to understand better and help the younger generation to understand better the future and preparing for the new era, what we call Eurasia era. And also I would like to just giving some suggestion that everybody can take the Eurasia magazine. We also writing about not only geopolitics and economics, but also the education and the culture is a very important part of our Eurasia magazine and also the Eurasia Forum. So thank you again for sharing with us your idea, and this was the warming up for the panel of the education. And thank you very much, and let's see the next panel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horváth. It was indeed a fascinating conversation and a great start for our panel. And now we are moving on to the panel discussion. So let me welcome Mr. Attila Kovács, Dean at the Budapest Metropolitan University. Previously, he was an associate professor at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico and at Kuwait College of Science and Technology in Kuwait City. He also held the same title at Károly Gáspár University of the Reformed Church. He had various positions in the public and academic sectors, including a senior research fellow position at the Institute for Foreign Affairs and Trade in Hungary. Mr. Kovács, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start the panel and let me introduce our distinguished panelists. First, Dr. Ayham FAYYOUMI, who is an advisor to top leaderships in different governments in the Middle East region. Dr. Ayham leads the education and digital transformation work of PricewaterhouseCoopers Middle East. He focuses in his job for higher education, technology-based learning, research and innovations, and how educational institutions can leverage emerging technologies in their institutions. It's my pleasure to greet Dr. Ayham FAYYOUMI. Dr. Paul Kim is an Associate Dean and Chief Technology Officer of the Graduate School of Education at Stanford University, where he leads the initiatives in learning technology design, educational research, and community development. Dr. Kim has dedicated himself to international development through education and information technology strategies, and for example, has advised a number of governments, including Saudi Arabia, Uruguay, and Rwanda. I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Paul Kim. Please join us on stage. And last but not least, Deepak Ori is the founder and CEO of Lebua Hotels and Resorts. He is recognized globally as a visionary hospitality industry leader and is a sought-after speaker at international conferences and top business schools worldwide. Mr. Ori has made Lebua Hotels and Resorts a global luxury brand in just 14 years, and he was named as one of the most inspirational executives in travel and hospitality in 2022. Deepak Ori authored A Bridge Not Too Far, Where Creativity Meets Innovation, which has earned acclaim as one of the top 25 best global marketing books. It's my privilege to invite Mr. Deepak Ori. Please join us on stage. Gentlemen, welcome you all. All eyes are on us. After this great lunch, we need to attention sustained. And at the introductory video, the main conclusion was that 32% of the jobs will disappear or transform in the coming years thanks to digitalization, automation, and artificial intelligence. How do you see in your respective industries? And let's start with you, Ayham. What are the jobs that will disappear? What are the jobs that will be created? How do you see this challenge from the point of view of universities and also the industry?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and it's really a pleasure to be here. First of all, maybe we mentioned and we heard digitalization a lot today and yesterday. But what does it mean? Normally, there are other terms like digitization versus digitalization. What's the difference between them? When we talk about, look at the pandemic and what happened with universities and schools during that, they moved immediately from traditional education, face-to-face lectures, to online. But what they have done is doing exactly the same, but using digital means. Delivering a 2-hour lecture, but online. Is that digitalization? Is that efficient? Is that productive? Is that improvement? Did it, we leveraged technology, but we didn't make any change. We didn't improve. So just starting as a starting point, digitalization is about rethinking the process by having technology in mind. And therefore, how digitalization is impacting the labor market. There will be several jobs, that as we've seen, will disappear. Things related to maybe customer service, receptions, accountants, and so on. So any routine tasks, obviously, will be replaced by AI and the machine. But also there are opportunities. So many jobs will be created. Some statistics even are more optimistic or pessimistic, depending on how you see it, saying that 50%, more than 50% even of kids entering primary schools today will work in jobs that are not available now, that don't exist now. Completely new jobs when they graduate. So that's a huge change. So how, when you think about the future, and this is a difficult question, of course, when we predict the future, but I will try. When we think about the future, maybe I prioritize 2 scenarios. One, and we all agree that technology will continue to improve and advance. AI solutions will improve, will advance, but we reach to a point where machine will be able to fix itself. Machine will be able to maintain itself. Machine will be able to develop and improve itself and other machines. And that's a very dangerous area. So what's going to happen where, even jobs that are in demand now, when we talk about programming, we talk about AI, we talk about I mean, in terms of development, cybersecurity, and so on, these can be also replaced in the future by technology itself. And therefore, maybe other skills will be, more soft skills can appear and will be in demand. And if we don't control that scenario with the right regulations and policies and responsibility from the owners, then we'll not be able to work and improve the workforce and make sure that the employability rates are increasing and improving. So with the right policies and regulations, we might reach to the second scenario, which is where brains and bots are in collaboration. So humans will collaborate and will use technology to work together to increase and improve productivity. So that's my initial suggestions. And for that, of course, there will be continuous upskilling in order for humans to be able to interact with technology and leverage technology and advanced technologies in the right way. There will be a need for continuous upskilling and reskilling throughout.
Thank you, Paul. You work in entrepreneurship for decades. You've been working. How do you see, from an entrepreneurial point of view, this shift, this change of workforce, labor force, skills? What are the jobs of the future? How do you see it?
So first of all, thank you, everyone, for coming, and also the organizer, the bank. And so thank you for having us, and thank you for giving me the good question there. As Ayham just mentioned, there will be a lot of jobs that will be disappearing by automation. At the same time, there will be a lot of new jobs that are going to be created. And I think that a lot of them will be related to AI. Education is one of the fields that is so difficult to change. And then many people try to make a difference in education ecosystem, but it hasn't been successful until the pandemic hit. As Ayham mentioned, the pandemic has a great impact on education, the whole ecosystem. There are some positives and also negatives. The positives are that the digitalization, many countries had to huddle up and come up with solutions to continue their education. If they had technological sort of access, they were okay. They were able to get by. But there are a lot of countries that did not have the infrastructure, didn't have access to technology, suffered a lot, and there was a real discontinuity of education in many developing countries. And we will talk a little more about that as well. In terms of changes, as we all know that everything evolves, the education is the one that's evolving with a very slow clock speed. So if you call this current education system the one that we've been in for decades or centuries, I would call it version 0.0, because there's no point of saying even 1.0. Version 1.0 would be something that focuses on digital literacy. And so a lot of countries have tried. One laptop per child, one tablet per child. In many different countries, they tried and failed. Why would they fail? Because the education ecosystem is so difficult to change, because it's a whole ecosystem that requires change. It's not just the teachers or just adding technology to the ecosystem. It's not about just the curriculum. It has to be done at the ecosystem level. The second one, the version 2.0, that I think that is appropriate to be labeled, is focus on the 4 C's. I think that a lot of people here hear a lot about 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. So the 4 C's have been talked about a lot as the future competencies that need to be focused more. And I totally agree with it. But at the same time, in order to talk about sustainable future, in terms of the peace and prosperity, obviously we need additional C's that I personally believe are compassion and commitment. A lot of people ask me, how do you go to Stanford? How do you go get the best education? And I ask them, why? what is the reason that you want to get your child the best education? For what reason? And I always say that, what's the aim of education? Aim of education is to educate our future leaders to make this place a better world for all. I always say for all, not for privileged communities or a population. So I would call that 2.0. And also on top of that now, the 3.0 that I would like to mention is it has to do with AI. The artificial intelligence is here. Whether you like it, whether you fear it, it's here, and it's going to expand, and it's going to influence everything that we do. And all the jobs that we see here today or tomorrow will be influenced by a certain level of AI. And so the 4 C's that I mentioned earlier will be changing in a way that 4 C's with AI, which means how do we collaborate with AI? How do we communicate with AI? And how do we become a more creative problem solver with AI? And how do we think more critically? And how do we analyze things with AI? And that is going to be the topics in the upcoming years. And then I feel that in my own work as well, I develop various solutions to be used in the education ecosystem. The way that I used to program, I had to understand every single code. And I had to make the whole program by myself. But now, the way that I do it is I interact with ChatGPT and alike. And then I ask it to code for me, and I ask it to fix it for me, etc. So you have to be able to communicate and collaborate with the AI at the same time with the other colleagues and friends that you have around you as your collaborators. But the significance of AI is serious, and we cannot let the ecosystem stay behind.
Thank you. So practically, we are not talking about 4 C's, but 6 C's already is invented on stage. Deepak, experience versus knowledge-based education. You are in the industry, but you also teach at a university in the United States. How do you see what skills are needed for students in order to address the challenges of the future? You have geographical expertise from India to the US. How do you see this question?
I'll take 2 minutes to answer that. But first of all, thanks to Central Bank of Hungary and Eurasia to invite me for 2 reasons. One, Budapest is a beautiful country. I love the people here. And second, I'm starting my new venture. And for 3 months, I've been running after the bankers. And today, I'm very happy that all the bankers are sitting and listening to me. Now, it's a panel discussion, but I want to ask the bankers, because they have real value. And for a long time, we didn't have any recession. Which is the most expensive real estate in the world? Anybody can answer, because he's timing me. So, so the most expensive real estate in the world. Anybody can answer.
Taj Mahal.
Okay, I want it from the audience. Anyone? No need to Google.
That's ChatGPT.
Oh, okay, that's ChatGPT. Which is the most expensive real estate in the world?
Tokyo, there's that...
Okay, it is graveyard. And the reason it is graveyard, because most of us die without using our ideas. And graveyard is a place where all the natural intelligence is buried because of one thing called FOPO, which is right now a research at Harvard Business School, fear of people's opinion. Now, coming to your question later, and come to AI first. A lot has been talked about AI. Some of you may call me a Luddite after what I'm going to say. But I listened to this podcast, and he described artificial intelligence very well. He said AI is like a child. Will do mistakes. but it needs trust, it needs freedom. And what you need to do is to teach your child how to be responsible. And when we are talking about so many different countries, forget about the countries, there must be, I think, 100 people here. No two people are same. And that is how human beings are. For 6 million years, we didn't have a second human being closer to us who below the cortex, right now AI is cortex, below the cortex, nobody is here who has got no other human being, no other species for 6 million years which has got emotions, which has got fear, which has got anger, which has got its feeling, it has got hurt, it has got love. So the point is, will AI really make people's job redundant? If I have to talk about the future, a famous economist said, there are only two kinds of people who can forecast, and I'm the type 2. Type 1 is they don't know. And what do you think I am? The type 2 is they don't know that they don't know. So I'm the type 2. So the future is that jobs won't go. If we look at technology, and I'm not a technological person, as and when the mobile technology has changed, from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, the world has also changed. And there has been a transformation. Even my job where at Labua, I'll be leaving end of the year, I'm transforming and starting new business of something which has not been there in US. So there's a transformation that is going to take place. People will transform. Now coming to your question about in hospitality, what is the role of AI? It is not hospitality specific, it is actually every industry specific. AI should be an enabler, not a disabler. Now it is up to us as human beings how we use AI. The only request to the government would be that this whole technology ecosystem should be regulated. At the same time, freedom should be given to the people who are designing these products. But it's not going to take any job. People will remain people, and people will meet people.
What percentage of jobs will disappear in the hotel and hospitality sector?
I think more, see, it depends on what kind of hotels we are operating and at what price width we are playing. When we are talking about luxury market, that is where my expertise lies. I don't think so luxury market, any job will go because of AI. Because luxury market is all about experience. You do not expect a person who's making $1 million a day to go to a kiosk and enter one cappuccino and wait for the cup to fall down and have a cappuccino. He needs a cappuccino to be given. Actually, on the contrary, in a luxury industry, more people will be hired. Because the definition of luxury is changing. The definition of luxury is time and trust. No, but you know, you're spending $1 million, you're earning $1 million, you're going for a 5 days holiday, you're compromising your $5 million a day. Plus you're spending your money. How you make that person experience worthwhile? Not through an AI. I'm sorry. So I have a very different take on this, but please. But I'm not a Luddite. But if I am, then I have joined the gang of Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and late Stephen Hawking, who got the Luddite Award in December 2015. Just what was their sin? A fear that AI will go out of hands. Please.
Thank you, Ayham. All of you mentioned artificial intelligence, digitalization. How can universities, schools, can use these new technologies in order to address the needs of the students and to be more competitive?
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. So if we go back to the history and look at education sector, as Dr. Paul mentioned, the education sector is difficult to change, and universities are struggling and pushing back and resisting that change, and similarly schools. But when we compare, and we have been hearing about digital education and the implementation of technology and tech within schools and universities for a while. We keep comparing traditional education with digital education or online or e-learning, whatever you want to call it. But going back to my example at the beginning, saying, transforming a 2-hour lecture, but doing it online, is that really a transformation? And for me, I'm trying to split that kind of digital education into two parts. One is a traditional digital education, where it's basically a digitization and moving things, but just online. And a more intelligent digital education, where is actually the transformation is happening. And this is about leveraging data, AI, learning analytics, and so on and so forth. And for that, universities and schools and education institutions in general can leverage education and emerging technologies in two ways. One, in the back end, sort of, to improve operations. And we are seeing the use of IoT, for example, Internet of Things, to monitor electricity consumption, for example. And this is a direct link to sustainability somehow. And then also blockchain, for example, for certification, certifying the graduates, and so on. ChatGPT for designing curriculum. And by the way, now many content producers generally are using ChatGPT to develop curriculum and content. If you want to develop a training material, a curriculum for a program, it can be easily developed by ChatGPT now. And you'll be shocked and surprised to know that there's 80% improvement in efficiency. And I've heard this from them directly. So you can imagine now they do the job 20% at 20% of the time, an effort, with the same quality and even a better quality. That's a huge transformation. So universities can do that, to improve operations, but also from the front side, from the front end, with the interaction, the teaching and learning process. Of course, and we talked about this maybe, and we heard it yesterday. There are multiple areas with virtual assistant, the bots that can help students, teachers, with administrative stuff, with the teaching and learning process, the tutors, and so on. There is adaptive learning. And what is adaptive learning? Leveraging AI and being able to understand the individual weaknesses and strengths of each student. That is the real personalization of an experience, a teaching and learning experience. And then create a path for each individual students based on their weaknesses and strengths, spending more time and effort on the learning objectives that they need to learn the most, and maybe pass quickly through the learning objectives they know and they learned quickly. But ultimately, all of the students will be able to reach to the same proficiency level. And that is really powerful. One of the universities, Westminster University, for instance, are using VR for law students. So technology is not necessarily being used for in science and STEM, but also in any topic. Teaching languages, law students are using VR to solve a murder case. So they wear the headset, they navigate into the scene, the crime scene, and try to solve, find clues to solve and that case. So for how this is going to be successful, what kind of recommendation we provide to education institutions in order to ensure that that implementation is successful? And we go back to that principle of design. Technology is a tool. It's the mean, it's not the goal. And if we don't consider that, we're not going to succeed. Many universities are coming to us, we implemented that system, X system and Y system and so on, but we didn't see an improvement. Oh yes, of course. Because you didn't think about redesigning the whole student journey and start from there. Take the journey of the student, map it out, identify the pain points and areas where it needs to improve, and see how we can leverage technologies and think about redesigning the journey rather than just plugging in technologies here and there. And listen to teachers and students, involve them, engage them. It's not a top-down approach. This is how it's going to work. Just do it. No. You need the buy-in. You need to engage the teachers and students in that redesign and rethinking of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Deepak, we had the conversation the other day, and you mentioned that you don't like university rankings. Why, and what alternative methods and evaluation frameworks do you think could be applicable in the world of higher education?
Okay, so I'm not the only one who doesn't like the university ranking. There are many schools. And
only one on stage.
Yeah, Ivy League schools which has dropped out of US ranking system because the ranking system is flawed, point number one. Point number two, it puts unnecessary pressure on students, okay? And that is very unnecessary. Third thing, I come from a very humble beginning, and I don't have those kind of education even at this level. The point is, education is important. It is not important from which college you have got the education. There are 8 billion people in the world. We are talking about sustainability. We are talking about, and all these things are important, don't get me wrong. So don't kill me. We are talking about sustainability. We are talking about ecosystem. But nobody talked about 3.5 billion people who are not educated. There's a Latin word, because I teach at Florida International University, and I don't speak Latin, but there's a Latin word called, anybody speaks Latin here? Okay, but you can Google it. It's called phronesis. P-H-R-O-N-E-S-I-S. Aristotle used this word 2,000 years back, and he says this is the biggest virtue that the modern world will always remember. An English translation or equivalent of word phronesis is practical wisdom. Now, AI, I'm in favor of AI because it is experiential. Human beings, we are experiential plus we evolve. We are evolutionary. We evolve also. Why no one is talking about using AI to teach those 3.5 uneducated people in the world? Why we are talking about 3.5 million, we're talking about AI will lose the job of 15%. Use AI. There are two ways of looking at things, and I'll tell you one story. I have 2 minutes, sir. I grew up in a humble background, and I was staying on one side of the street. And it is in my book called A Bridge Not Too Far. It's a commercial break. So we were told not to cross the street. And one day, I was 6-year-old, I crossed the street, and the gentleman invited me in and gave me a Coca-Cola. That time in India, Coca-Cola was allowed. Then it was not allowed, and then again allowed. I really loved that drink, and the most important thing was he put the ice cube in that. And I had never seen the ice cube in my life. Then I asked him, can I see the house? He said, yes. So I looked at the house and I went to the bedroom. The bedroom had an attached bath. So I asked him, uncle, when you wake up in the morning, do you have to stand in the queue to use the washroom? He said, no, it belongs to me. So I said, you wake up and you enter the washroom anytime you want. He said, yes. I came back to the house. I asked my late father, Daddy, what do I need to do to have a glass of Coke every day and have a bedroom with attached bath? There are many people like me today. That day onward, I said, I will never stand in a queue. So the way of thinking is not about how many people will lose the job. Use AI to educate the people who are not educated. And that is the reason I think that the ranking system is flawed, because ranking system allows only certain people to get into certain school. It should not be there. And AI should be used extensively for the benefit of the world and for the benefit of our ecosystem.
Thank you, Paul. Let's talk a little bit about the concerns and fears attached to the use of artificial intelligence. How can we handle that? What can universities do? And maybe a second part of the question, you all mentioned, but to you first, you all mentioned regulation, the word regulation in the context of artificial intelligence. Can regulation work? You have worked in a number of places in the world with different cultural contexts. How do you say, can artificial intelligence be regulated?
It needs to be regulated at some point, but at this point, I think we should focus on leveraging it instead of regulating it. As Deepak mentioned about many people who are not getting the education, and why don't we use AI? And you should be proud of my work. As soon as the generative AI, GPT, came out, I created a series of solutions. And one of the solutions is to give coaching to youth. And I deployed that solution in Lebanon for the Syrian refugee children. They wanted to know where can they go from where they are. And so the children in Syrian refugee camps, they were able to access my solution through their mobile phone. And they typed in what they like, what they don't like, what they're good at, what they're interested in, and what they aspire to become. And then this generative AI solution that I developed, leveraging GPT 3.5 back then, and it was able to give a coaching session to the child. And the children were very happy to learn that there are so many things that they can do. They have so many potentials they can identify and develop and become the person or the sort of the role model that they want to become eventually. So that's one example of using AI. And the other solution that I developed, it's called Ask Smile, and it's a name of a project. You can actually try it by going to ask.smile.stanford.edu. What it does, it evaluates your question. What I'm interested in is helping the learners coming up with very first question no one has asked in human history. And that's the challenge. I want the learners to be able to ask very first question no one has asked. So the power of questioning is becoming very important because of the proliferation of the AI. And so I deployed that solution, and I talked about it and released it to many school districts. And one school district in Korea has come up with a scenario where the high school students were asking all kinds of questions, and they wanted to get the highest sort of the quality question that no one has asked. And based on the question that they raised, they experimented. They were actually experimenting something about salt, how salt is formed and why is it having its certain structures, etc. And then they came up with a series of questions that no one has asked, and they actually conducted experiments, and they came up with the results, and they gave me the reports. And I was very impressed that they were able to ask questions that are of high quality, and no one has asked those questions, and they were curious about it, and they experimented it. And then they were using these AI solutions that I developed. So there are many, many solutions that will be coming to the education ecosystem to equalize. I think the key word here is the equalizer. I think AI can be an equalizer if we use it properly. And at some point, if it starts to be going in the wrong direction, obviously we'll have to think about regulating it. But I would say there are so many opportunities that can be harvested.
Thank you. Deepak, as a successful entrepreneur, you have a principle which says 80% rules, 20% principles. What does it cover exactly?
So this whole idea came because of startups. When I started, I'm the oldest on this panel, for all your information, the oldest person. So when I started, there were not many startups. There are many startups today, and I love startups. Not for the reason that they are entrepreneurs who are trying something, because every startup, there's a lot of principle involved. And as the organization starts becoming mature, it becomes rules-based organization. Now, in a world where we want a sustainable organization, sustainable atmosphere, we should have a hybrid model where 20% are principles and 80% are rules. So that's how the idea of principle and rule-based organization has come, because we have to go in between where we are today. So it is like evolving.
Thank you. Ayham, you live in the Middle East, and we hear a lot of things lately about Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, a lot of money available, a lot of ambition in the region. How do you see the future of labor market and education in the Middle East?
I think many of the challenges being shared by the rest of the world, basically. And universities are struggling. One of the key KPIs on universities is to ensure employability, so employability of their students. And that's an objective. That's what they do is basically, skilling those people to work and enter the workforce. But the challenge is, to know what skills are needed by the market. And now we can predict and we can do the analysis now, supply-demand analysis, look at the unemployment and which sectors and so on, and we can tell, that these sectors, these skills are needed, these skills are not needed, there's no demand on those and so on. But if you think about it, a university need to think about 5 years in advance. I mean, because they need to develop the program, they need to launch the program, teach the program, and graduate students after 3, 4, 5 years. So therefore, it's more about predictions. What's going to happen in 5 years, at least. And that's a tricky part. But a key role that universities are playing is to, create those learners, students that, they learn how to learn. So they have the adaptability and they can adapt to the changes happening in the market and then continue to develop themselves. So continuous professional development and therefore, coming back to EdTech and AI and the technology and emerging technologies being used in education, we heard of the micro credentials and nano credentials. So now everyone is, in order to continuously develop your skills while you are working, you need to have available time for that. And those micro credentials, chunks of learning, material, objectives, and courses that you can build up, take at your convenience in several periods of time, and build those up to form a qualification or a certificate or a degree is going to be the trend. So what's happening in the region is really there is a huge focus on, from a strategic perspective, on e-learning strategies. Qatar have done the national e-learning strategy. Saudi has done an e-learning strategy. And of course, there are several other countries globally are doing it. Singapore is a great example. I think they renewed the 6th strategy now, e-learning strategy. So that strategic focus on the use of technology in education is excellent, is amazing. The second thing is, of course, focus on teacher training. Because, again, if teachers are not equipped well and able to use AI and technologies and EdTech in the right way, then there is no improvement in outcome at the end. And lastly, governments are very involved in skilling and upskilling and reskilling. And we're talking about ministries like Ministry of Labor or HR. We're focusing on certain priority sectors to improve the skills of workers currently available in the workforce, basically, and make sure that they are aligned with the changes happening in the market. So those are the 3 themes and what's happening in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, the time has passed very quickly. We need to make the final round, like 2 minutes for each of you. What should be your final message in this regard to the audience and also to governments and policymakers who are sitting here in the room? What should be done in Hungary in general in order to better prepare for this transition of education and labor market? Ayham.
Well, okay, quickly, I think if I want to prioritize one thing is, the role of education. We heard this, especially about the role of individuals. So there is a role of government, institutions, and individuals. And education is playing a huge role in changing the mindset of individuals. So if we start at an early age and make sure that education builds that responsible citizen, thinking about the environment and considering the changes, the impact of the climate and the environment, then you start building that new generation that will help, hopefully, solving the problems.
Well, sure. Many people probably agree that the aim of education is not to produce smart students. I think that we need to help students become more wiser, and meaning that they need to be responsible for future of peace and prosperity. And therefore, the way that to reform education, in my view, I think there are so many ways to reform education from very early stage to the later stage. And I think that is to introduce the real world problems from the, all the things that we discussed, sustainable development goals, and those things need to be the materials in curriculum, in classrooms, and in order for students to be able to leverage various digital technologies and AI, I think they need to know why. And I always say that teaching them why is going to be motivating them and inspiring them, and that's how you engage them in solving the problems from very early stage. And that's how they grow up to be leaders, making global impact. So I think that's how I see redefining education, redefining school, redefining what learning means in the future society.
Thank you, Deepak.
I'm a little bit of experiential kind of a person, but not AI, NI, natural intelligence. So I'm going to ask a question here in the audience, and I would need a support. And then you will understand why I'm asking. How many of you who are working need more salary? You can raise the hand, don't worry. Your bosses won't be seen.
Is my boss here?
The room is dark. How many of who you are working here needs more salary? Very good. How many of you want to be successful?
We are all ready.
No. A question. Okay. And how many of you want to transform yourself? So those who want to transform themselves are safe, because when you're asking for more salary, that's a transaction. When you want to be successful, that is a desire. These two are area of opportunities. My last words on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deepak, Paul, Ayham, thank you very much for joining us on this panel. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kovács, for guiding us through this session, and I also would like to thank the participants for their valuable insights. To close the last thematic panel discussion, we are going to listen to a high-level keynote speech related to the education panel. For this last keynote address, let me invite Mr. Kil-hwa Jung, Chairman of the Korean Foundation for International Cultural Exchange, Republic of Korea, while he focuses his efforts on promoting international cultural exchange and the Korean wave. For over 30 years, he has mainly produced documentary programs related to history and culture at MBC, a major South Korean broadcasting company. For 3 years from 2011, he worked as the director of MBC's Latin America branch as well as a foreign correspondent. Afterwards, he pursued a doctoral degree at Hankook University of Foreign Studies on the topic of the Korean wave fandom in Central and South America. Mr. Chung, welcome. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone. 요나봇 기반옥. 반갑습니다, 여러분. 저는 한국에서 온 정기라입니다. My name is Kil-hwa Jung and I'm from Korea. I am very honored to be here at the Eurasia Forum today and present my keynote for education and culture. I have prepared a presentation entitled The Sustainability of Hallyu. How K-culture has evolved and its tasks in the future. I hope you will enjoy the presentation. I am chairman of KOFIS, Korean Foundation for International Cultural Exchange. This year was 20th anniversary of KOFIS, as it was first founded in 2003. KOFIS is a government sector in charge of international cultural exchange under South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports, Tourism. The mission of KOFIS is to serve as a network hub that connects Korea with the world through culture. For this, KOFIS tries to facilitate international cooperation through diverse cultural exchange. Please look at this photo. Do you recognize a familiar face? Yes. This is Liszt Ferenc, Hungary's great musician. Before my current role, I've worked as a documentary director for Korea's Broadcasting Corporation, MBC. 37 years ago, in 1986, I came to Hungary to make a special documentary to commemorate 100 years of Liszt's death. The title of this program was Hometown of Masterpiece. My visit took place 3 years before South Korea and Hungary formed official diplomatic relations in 1989. I take pride in how my show was the messenger that first opened the door for the friendship of the two countries. Let me briefly share footage from the show that was aired 37 years ago in Korea. Please volume up.
취재팀은 프란츠 리스트의 모국 헝가리의 입국을 강행했다. 낯선 세계로의 첫 발은 늘상 우리를 까닭 모를 초조와 기대로 설레게 했다. 더욱이 쉽지 않은 경로로 이루어진 헝가리의 취재이기에.
Yeah. I'm very delighted to visit Hungary again after 37 years. I believe that I led intercultural exchange between two nations back then. Indeed, culture is foundational to international cooperation and serves as an opportunity to affiliation. With more intercultural exchanges, there will be more understanding and affinity among the people of Hungary and Korea. In 1986, that year, the Neumann family, a Hungarian singer group, performed in Seoul, Korea. Late in 1988, when Korea hosted the Seoul Olympics, as you know, Hungary was the first Eastern European nation to declare their participation. Through these exchanges, the two nations fostered trust and allyship, which led to official diplomatic relations in 1989. In a way, South Korea's northward policy has intersected with Hungary's eastward policy. After that, the two nations bonded very fast, as illustrated in the PowerPoint slide. Hungarian studies majors in South Korea and Korean studies majors in Hungary have been established. The Korean drama Jewel in the Palace, in Chinese title is ZHANG, was screened in MTV and made a hit in Hungary, 2008. Furthermore, K-pop fan union club was established in Hungary. At last, both the cultural centers were founded in each respective countries. This year, Hungary's street artists group, Neopaint, visited Korea to wallpoint the Rubik's Cube. This event was part of the Mutual Culture Program, sponsored by our coffees. As you can see, there are vibrant cultural exchanges between Korea and Hungary. So, I have mentioned from the beginning K-drama and K-pop. All of this is referred to as Hallyu, Korean wave. Today, I want to talk about Hallyu that interconnects Korea and Hungary. As you can see, Here, Parasite, Squid Game, BTS, and Blackpink are famous Hallyu content. The term Hallyu is now officially coined in the Oxford English Dictionary. Hallyu is defined as a phenomenon in which South Korean popular culture and cultural content spread globally and become popularly consumed abroad. Etymologically, the term originates from a Chinese word. In the 90s, Korean soap opera were first exported and introduced to China. 律西恋情 还有爱情学什么 Chinese title. And many young dance musicians from Korea also became popular in China. In 1999, one Chinese media, Beijing Qingnianbao, called this phenomenon as Hallyu. Later, the phenomenon spread to Japan, Southeast Asia, and Middle East, etc. Retrospectively, Hallyu as a phenomenon has been going on 30 years, despite the geopolitical and cultural challenges that have erupted since 2016. Nevertheless, Hallyu has now become a worldwide phenomenon. Let us go more into K-pop. K-pop can largely be defined as idol pop and dance music for the young. K-pop's origin dates to 1992 by the group Strategy and Boys. The term K-pop came out in 1999. The main characteristics of K-pop are defined by a rigorous training system, rap and synchronized dance, brilliant music video, and strong fandom. K-content has expanded gradually. Scholars have said, with each 51 million population against the 7 billion global population, Korea has shown the rebellion of 0.7%. Some have especially called the phenomenon an unplanned success. Scholars and works in the field claim that Hallyu began from television dramas. So, it is useful to number the different phases of Hallyu from 1 0 point, 2 0 point, 3 0 point. 1 0 point is television sub-opera centered, while 2 0 point to K-pop. And 3 0 point encompasses game, webtoons, food, and beauty. Hallyu 3.0 is diverse in its genre. This phenomenon has led to new Hallyu and expanded itself to other K-content. The creators and producers developed their content, while the government, Korean government, provided policy support by establishing the necessary infrastructure. To sum up, regionally, K-pop has started in Northeast Asia, but spread to Eurasia and all over the world. Its platforms have shifted from television network to YouTube and OTT and SNS and other digital platforms. Theoretical frameworks have also changed in explaining Hallyu. At first, it began with the premixed theory. But now the focus is on hybridity and universality. Please look at this graph of details. And do you recognize this photo next to the graph? Do you know him? Yeah, it's Psy, who sang the popular hit song Gangnam Style in 2012. Next, let me discuss how Hallyu has changed the reputation of South Korea. This is what Copies has surveyed according to the contents and icons produced by Hallyu. We have used the word cloud program to examine the keywords associated with Hallyu. It's surveyed through the frequencies of keywords and labeled according to different countries and continents. You can see what the associated keywords are. Clearly, K-pop and K-food are dominant keywords. This means that most people around the world associate Korea with K-pop and K-food and Hallyu. Hallyu means Korean wave. Let's now examine the effects of Hallyu. Hallyu brings immense economic benefits in addition to cultural value. In terms of export, its revenue increased by about 2 times from $5.1 million in 2008 to $12 million in 2022. When it comes to positive yields, there has been an increase of about 5 times, rising from 5 trillion Korean won to 26 trillion won. And its added value has increased approximately 7 times, growing from 1.7 trillion won to 12.7 trillion won over the past 14 years. In 2021, South Korea became officially labeled as a developed country from developing country by UNCTAD. In 1997, Newsweek has claimed Koreans are coming. But in 2021, British The Times had declared Korean culture is conquering the world. It's not my opinion. The Times reported that. I wish to claim the historical significance of Hallyu. A renowned Hallyu scholar, Professor Hong, has said, Hallyu shows how a country with a traumatic national past can also have a cultural leverage and become a global cultural agent through democracy and cultural development. South Korea has shown that it can seize and realize the future that is also idealized by other countries. For instance, in Southeast Asia, when Korean content first became popular, there was a cautionary ambience. But people began to relish and enjoy Korean culture and finally started emulating South Korea as a role model. In other words, Hallyu has evolved from resistance discourse to opportunity discourse. Of course, Hallyu must always veer toward reciprocal, amicable, compassionate, and humble Hallyu instead of unilateralism. There are many tasks that Hallyu must overcome in the future. First, it should be wary of its economic and profit-oriented tendencies. Hallyu must not try to over-prioritize profit over its shared values. It would not be wise to focus on short-term goals. No pali-pali. Do you know pali-pali? Next, we must be aware of growing anti-Hallyu or counter-Hallyu phenomena. Hallyu must distance from unbalanced expansion and self-fulfilling tendencies and cultural superiority. It is utmost important to caution against the cultural appropriation. Lastly, we must think about the content itself. Sustainability of Hallyu requires innovation, change, and creativity from its creators. self-repeating productions will not last long. And freedom of expression, freedom of speech is important to foster creativity. I think sustainable development is different from sustaining the growth. Hallyu must continue to increase quantitative growth through qualitative maturity. Oh, I'm sorry. I have catch cold. COPIS is involved in a lot of projects. Our organization constantly tries to overcome the adverse impacts of profit-oriented models and try to manifest public value of Hallyu. Our projects introduced in this slide, for example, Grow Together, Outlooky, as well as other forms of communal development, Asia Song Festival, etc., all aim to fulfill this objective. These projects emphasize reciprocal Hallyu, compassionate Hallyu, and amicable Hallyu. I believe this will contribute to the sustainability of Hallyu. Thank you very much. 쾌세넘 7, 대단히 고맙습니다.
Thank you, Mr. Chung, for your thought-provoking presentation. Now we are having a 15-minute break, then we are going to continue our program with a keynote conversation and closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, see you soon.
For researchers like myself who look at the political economy of finance and financial technology, Shanghai is definitely an important location and one that shouldn't be missed. So Fudan being at the heart of Shanghai, both at the academic and market side of finance, makes a big difference.
Shanghai is definitely a very good destination for foreigners to visit this country and to learn about China.
It's been really great to meet so many people across the Fudan community, from undergraduates to graduates to postdoctoral scholars and professors. And I think the space here at FDI is wonderful to work at. I'm able to work at different coffee shops in front of the lawn around Guanghua Lowell in this building, and it's just been a wealth of people, ideas, and places here that I've been very grateful for.
As a university academic, there's a danger that we would stay in a small circle of people who think the same way, that we live in the library. FDDI as a think tank was very useful for me to meet people in the business sector, meet people in political sectors, and I could bring their opinions into my research.
The international environment for the job market is very difficult at the moment for early career scholars, and I really wanted something that would give me an edge. And in fact, the FDDI program provided me with that edge.
What I liked about FDDI was that I had a chance to meet other experts of several areas, and also the audience at my two presentations was quite interactive, which I liked. For example, at my presentation about how the Belt and Road Initiative impacts the energy security of China, we discussed security issues involved.
We have a very unique style of work here. It's very friendly, academic, highly recreational, and interchanging. For example, we go out and see places, we share our experiences of life together, we take photographs, we take videos, and then we laugh.
So at FDDI, there was a lot of freedom to work. We had good facilities. The staff was really, really helpful. I think if you really want to do any good visiting fellowship in China, FDDI gives you the best.
It's pretty clear that, that China and Shanghai and Fudan University is a very, very, very dynamic place. Have never experienced such a dynamic institution as Fudan University, and that's also encouraging for me. China is a leading power in economy, but becoming very soon, I guess, also a leading power in academic research and teaching.
The program is an epitome of the diversity in Fudan. We have brilliant people from both academia and industry, and we have achievements in both research and practices. Diversity is always the key word here at FDDI, and that is why how we win top talents and inspire great ideas here.
Connecting people, sharing knowledge.
Connecting people,
sharing knowledge.
Connecting people,
sharing knowledge.
We're living in a changing world. The pandemic and unprecedented changes have created both challenges and opportunities. To explore certainty in an uncertain world, the BFA Annual Conference 2023 will unite us around the common goal, addressing challenges through cohesion and cooperation, and promoting development through openness and inclusiveness.
We live in an era of globalization, and we have never been so connected with each other. The world today is incredibly integrated in areas ranging from trade and technology to people exchanges.
I remember in 2008, when Beijing was holding Beijing Olympic. The slogan then was "One World, One Dream." That exactly symbolized the globalization. And we found it was really a great time and occasion to establish our think tank, Center for China Globalization, CCG.
Through our efforts over the past 15 years, CCG has become one of China's leading think tanks and is internationally recognized. CCG is the only Chinese think tank to be granted official special consultative status by the United Nations as a non-governmental organization, and ranked 64th out of the top 100 think tanks worldwide in 2020 by the University of Pennsylvania Think Tank and Civil Society Program. CCG has nearly 100 full-time researchers and employees, and we have also been designated as a postdoctoral research center by the Chinese government.
So the motto for CCG is that global vision for China and Chinese wisdom for the world. So we strive to be a leading think tank for building a bridge between China and the outside world. We really seek to communicate, seek to hear, but also seek to understand.
As an international think tank, CCG is committed to researching important global issues. We have participated in and influenced the creation of multiple policies on national development and global governance, supporting and driving innovation in China's decision-making process and institutional environment. We also strive to build consensus and provide suggestions through Track 2 diplomacy, as well as various seminars and high-end forums. CCG's team of experts also proactively engages with the international mainstream media to share their views and China's story with the world. In 2020, CCG launched the Global Young Leaders Dialogue, also known as GYLD. The program serves as a bridge between young leaders around the world and promotes international exchange. The program has been widely recognized both in and outside of China, and in 2021, Chinese President Xi Jinping responded to a letter written by GYLD participants, recognizing the success of the program and encouraging young leaders to engage more with China.
To launch the GYLD Wise Demo campaign last year, to encourage young people worldwide to come up with innovative solutions on global issues.
I also want to specifically call out Henry and commend him as the president of CCG, for his leadership, his passion, and great intellectual acumen in driving CCG to become, perhaps, a best-in-class think tank.
Thank you for a very constructive, generous, and sharp yet warm dialogue that we've been able to have.
Henry, I think it's extremely important that we have conversations like this, and that through the unofficial channels of academia.
We are now living a very complex and very challenging world. I mean, we are now in the 21st century, but human being has met unprecedented challenges of climate change and also pandemic, and also, of course, the geopolitical risk. But I think it's important that to have a think tank to really think globally and act locally, and also the think tank has to really have a vision. So I think for CCG, our future vision is really to build up this bridge to connect China and the world, to really be a global communicator, a global bridge builder, and a global dialogue platform.
We are a cohesive and collaborative community of fintech professionals.
A collective voice for a shared progress.
Productive dialogues, common goals, and progress for the entire Singapore fintech ecosystem.
Singapore is already one of the world's top financial centers, and leading in fintech is an extension of that. The SFA acts as a bridge between the public and private sectors by facilitating open, two-way conversations. We are an excellent platform that enables all stakeholders to come together, share knowledge, and work together in this fast-paced and critical industry.
The Singapore FinTech Association has 3 key roles. 1, build the community. 2, be the voice of the community. And 3rd, set high standards for the community.
The key for me in terms of the role of the SFA that is playing in the industry is to really spark engaging conversations among the industry peers together with the public sector stakeholders.
The Singapore FinTech Association has been a tremendous partner with MAS in terms of policy making. They've been providing us inputs from the ground, and we take that input, we think through the policies we are putting in place, and that partnership has worked well for us.
We have made great strides in bringing the individual and corporate member communities together. We launched the SJ FinTech Club, which has been a great success. It has brought together individuals and professionals for knowledge sharing sessions to be able to share their expertise and experience amongst each other and to build a collaborative community together. We've also seen strong traction in our subcommittees with teams set up across fintech industry verticals such as payments, wealth tech, Web 3.0, as well as cross-industry verticals such as green and sustainable subcommittee.
As an entrepreneur in the tech industry, the key job for me is really about driving the innovation agenda across the products we have as a company. And I would say the SFA has been an incredible resource.
In October 1972, representatives from across the world met in London to sign the charter establishing the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, known as IASA. It was the culmination of 6 years' effort by US President Lyndon Johnson and USSR Premier Alexei Kosygin, and marked the beginning of a remarkable project to use scientific cooperation to build bridges across the Cold War divide and to confront growing global problems on an international scale. YASA was forged in the name of science diplomacy, and today it still regards science diplomacy as a key tool to help build trust between nations and support foreign policies.
Science diplomacy can succeed when other channels sometimes are not successful. I think the successes that I've seen and sometimes participated in gives me confidence that I think there's always a role to play for science diplomacy. Because I think the one thing that science has managed to do consistently throughout that period was to act as a soft form of diplomacy in a sense. In other words, where it could actually open up doors, start conversations and start bridge building.
Science diplomacy is shown in 3 dimensions. First, science for diplomacy. Scientific cooperation improves international relations. Second is science in diplomacy. Science provides advice to inform foreign policy. And third is diplomacy for science, when diplomacy facilitates international scientific cooperation. All these 3 dimensions are present at EASA.
One example is EASA's project called Challenges and Opportunities of Economic Integration within a wider European and Eurasian space. In this project, we focused on the future of economic ties between the European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union. The science for diplomacy contribution of EASA in this case was to bring parties with very different views into a dialogue. Through this dialogue, they built trust, which was very critical in the political reality of that time.
A recent example of science diplomacy in action at the Institute is the YASA and International Science Council consultative platform.
I thank the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis and the International Science Council for bringing us all together for the first advisory board meeting of the EASA ISC consultative platform.
And the idea was to learn from what was happening from the COVID-19 crisis, to see if we could look at some of the things that we could preserve. But the most important thing was to try to see if we could prioritize the areas for transformation that could help us to build a more sustainable and equitable world. Within a fairly short period of time, we were able to put together online consultations that gathered some 350 experts in science, in practitioners, and in policymakers.
We need to cooperate and collaborate more effectively than ever before.
EASA has the potential not just to be a player among others in science diplomacy, but it has the legitimacy to exercise global leadership.
As a scientific institution, we can only put the scientific facts on the table. The science is not negotiable. What is negotiable is the way that that's used and the way that different countries or different societies may choose to harness the science for their own benefit. And there's always a little bit of room for maneuver there, because at the end of the day, political decision making is not just about science. It's also about the economy, and it's always going to be about people. It's not just about science. I think science needs to make its case, and science needs to put its best foot forward, and science needs to try and demonstrate why it's in the interest of societies to adopt a worldview that embraces science.
Welcome back everyone at the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2023 conference. We have already reached the end of our regular program, and now it is my pleasure to announce our last professional program, an online keynote conversation between Mr. Márton Ugrosdi, Deputy State Secretary and Head of the Office of the Prime Minister's Political Director, Cabinet Office of the Prime Minister of Hungary, and Jeffrey Sachs, Director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. Dr. Jeffrey Sachs is a world-renowned economics professor, best-selling author, innovative educator, and global leader in sustainable development. He is also widely recognized for bold and effective strategies to address complex challenges, including the escape from extreme poverty, the global battle against human-induced climate change, international debt and financial crisis, national economic reforms, and the control of pandemic and epidemic diseases. Professor Sachs can also be familiar to those who followed last year's forum.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, welcome to the high-level keynote part of the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2023 edition. We are delighted to have Professor Jeffrey Sachs joining us today to deliver his remarks on but most of the pressing issue that the world is facing today. My name is Márton Ugrosdi. I serve as Deputy State Secretary at the Prime Minister's Office, leading the operations of the Prime Minister's Political Director. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Professor Sachs, who has been a great friend of Hungary and also one of our most important allies for rationality in the world, which is unfortunately few and far between. And before we jump into the conversation, I think it's really important to recognize him as one of the leading thinkers of our day, who is willing to speak up also in questions which tend to be unpopular with the mainstream. And that has gained him a lot of enemies recently, but we have to applaud him for that persistence and leadership that he has shown in the last few years to stand up for justice, to stand up for the poor, and also to stand up for reason in the world, which is unfortunately a little bit on the decline. And this is why I'm so happy that he was able to accept our invitation to this forum today, because we need more events like this to spread the idea and spread the word that common sense is not dead yet, that common sense is alive and kicking. And if we join our forces, if we talk together, if we engage each other more, there's a significant change that we can make. Because if we don't speak up for ourselves, nobody else will. If we don't speak up for ourselves, then our political opponents will get the upper hand and they will pretend that if we didn't exist. But we do exist. We are willing to fight, and we are joined in this fight by great intellectuals like Professor Sachs himself. So let me jump into the first question right away. Professor, in one of your most recent public speeches delivered at the pre-COP28 Faith Leaders Summit in Abu Dhabi earlier this year, you mentioned and you stated that the global community is facing great challenges today, including the right to live peacefully, sustainably on a crowded and interconnected planet. Now, if I look around, I see that at least 3 of these 4 ideas are being challenged. Peace, sustainability, and connectivity. Interconnectedness is something which is under serious attack by certain very influential political players globally. And this also leads us to the issue of how crowded the planet would be. So I'm very interested to hear that. What are your thoughts on this and how you think we can do something against this? And what is the key takeaway from the changes that we have been seeing in the world recently, thanks to decoupling, thanks to the increasing number of wars, and thanks to the increasing level of ideology in interstate contacts?
First, let me thank you for including me in the Budapest Eurasian Summit. I'm really happy to take part, and congratulations to your government for being a voice of sanity in a world that sometimes doesn't want to hear not only common sense, I would say, but common decency. What we really need is to be able to listen to counterparts, hear their points of view, and treat the counterparts with respect. Rather than with bombing or with war or with trying to cut off relations. You know, we're 8 billion people on a very crowded and troubled world because of environmental distress, because of unbelievable gaps between the super wealthy and the super poor, and all of the instability that causes. And we're in a geopolitical transformation that is profound. You know, the United States really was relatively dominant for much of the period after 1945. And especially in the U.S. imagination, it stood alone after 1991, when the Soviet Union ended. The United States declared itself as the heavyweight champion of the world, the unrivaled superpower, the unipower of the world. Of course, it was arrogant because how could a country of a little more than 4% of the world population be so presumptuous? But the fact of the matter is, it's obvious now we're in a multipolar world. We're in a world in which China is a superpower. And I say good for that. That's my own attitude. Why should there be one power? That's a myth. There should be a world in which each part of the world has its voice, has its role, and contributes constructively to global solutions. What we have right now is sometimes called a polycrisis, because we seem to be completely overloaded with crises, whether it's the climate crisis, the destruction of biodiversity, the crisis of mass instability, the wars in Ukraine, and now in Israel and Palestine. But my feeling is that at the root of this is that the United States has not been listening to the rest of the world. It's been arrogant and assuming that it could dictate its ways. And this can't work conceivably, but it does lead to conflict and very dangerous conflict. The war in Ukraine, in my estimation, came most importantly because the United States was pushing NATO relentlessly and not listening to Russia. Russia said, stop, we don't want you right on our border, more than 2,000 kilometers border with Ukraine, leave some space. And the United States said, we don't hear you. And in the Middle East, the crisis fundamentally arises from, in my opinion, the lack of a state of Palestine as a member of the UN and living peacefully side by side Israel. And the idea has been of Israel backed by the United States. Well, we can just impose what we want, but you can't impose something that doesn't fit reality. And the reality is, in Israel and Palestine, there are two peoples. And they are both numerous, and the Palestinians need political rights alongside Israel, in my opinion. And the United States, again, told Israel for 30 years, we've got your back, you do what you want, and that doesn't work. And now we're in a war in the Middle East as well. So my basic recommendation is multipolarity, mutual respect, keeping lines of communication open, and understanding that an interconnected world is a better world for everybody. And this is something that Hungary is so wisely promoting, the idea of connectivity as central to well-being, not decoupling, de-risking, conflict, trying to pretend that Russia isn't on the map, which is a little hard to do for a country with 11 time zones. But this is the attitude, unfortunately, of some in the U.S. and some followers of the U.S. that is getting us deeper and deeper into a mess. So that's what I'm trying to propound, is true multipolarity, true mutual respect, true mutual tolerance, connectivity, and use the United Nations because we invented it for a reason. We need a place where diplomacy and international law prevails, not just the purported rule by the powerful.
Mm-hmm. Teddy Roosevelt once famously said that you have to speak softly and carry a big stick. And I would like to add that you have to speak softly, carry a big stick, and listen attentively to your partners. And it seems like that if the West was short on all of these three, because we're not as powerful as we used to be. If you look at how the GDP of the world is produced, you will see that the role of the West is diminishing every day that passes, especially the strength of the European Union. So we don't have the big sticks anymore. We fail to speak softly either, because what we do is to shout at our partners, trying to convince them something that even we don't believe it at times. So the credibility gap is growing. And we completely fail, especially the United States, completely fails to listen to its partner, understand their needs, and it's always trying to dictate its own interests. And from the great power point of view, of course, this makes perfect sense. But if you look at all the uncertainty that has emerged in the world in the last 5 to 10 years, you will see that this really needs to nowhere. And I was wondering that with your idea of multipolarity, with alternative great powers emerging like China, what the role of the others can be, what the others can contribute, and how they can convince us that maybe we'll have to revise our strategy because this is a dead end.
I think at the core of this is a certain arrogance of the U.S. I wrote a book about this back in 2019 called A New Foreign Policy Beyond American Exceptionalism. The problem is economic success went to America's head. And in 1941, the publisher of Time magazine, Mr. Luce, proclaimed the American century. Basically said to the American people, well, this is your century, for you will lead the world. And that generated a tremendous amount of arrogance. The U.S. was strong and powerful, and in 1945 was clearly the economic, financial, and technological leader of the world because World War II had destroyed so much and had left so much of the world in ruins. And the United States, by contrast, in World War II, built up the largest industrial economy in history, and with big technological breakthroughs that came from war technology itself, like radar and semiconductors and other things which put the U.S. into this huge lead. Now, of course, the Soviet Union was a military rival to the United States during the Cold War period, and because of the nuclear arms race, the two sides were, in a way, precariously balanced and almost came to nuclear war on a number of occasions, but most dramatically 61 years ago in the Cuban Missile Crisis. But still, even then, the United States really was in the technological lead. But what happened over time is that know-how, literacy, quality education spread, as it should, to the rest of the world. And most dramatically, for those of us who know a bit about economic history, we know that China's terrible poverty as of 1949, when the People's Republic of China was established, was a historical anomaly if you take a long view. For most of history, China was, if not the leading power, certainly one of the very top 2 or 3 technology, commercial, cultural leaders of the world. And for 500 years, I would say at least from 500 AD to 1500 AD, clearly the technological leader. We got so many good things from China, from the compass and paper making and gunpowder and
fireworks,
currency, and all of this came from China towards the West. Then China made a bad mistake, by the way. In 1434, they stopped their naval fleets, which were roaming the Indian Ocean and actually reaching as far as East Africa, and would have discovered, I think, the way to the New World, also to the Americas. But China unilaterally stopped that outward exploration and navigation, even though it was clearly dominant. And that opened the way for Europe to go east and to go west after 1500, basically. And by the time that the two really met again, it was the 19th century. Europe was in the early industrializer, especially Britain. And Britain really took over much of the world, including going to war with China in 1839 and what we call the First Opium War. Now, the result of all of this is that by 1949, Asia, which had been the center of the world economy for most of 2 millennia, because most people lived in Asia, 60% of the world population, had a share of the world output between 15 and 20%, even though the share of the population was 60 to 70%. In other words, Asia, both China and India, Southeast Asia, had fallen under European imperial domination, European wars, and then Japanese wars and invasions, because Japan industrialized at the end of the 19th century and went to war with China as a result of that. So China was impoverished, but that was not historical. That was an accident, what China calls the century of humiliation. And from the founding of the People's Republic, but especially from 1978 onward, China surged. It caught up. It educated the population, stabilized the economy, began massively rapid economic growth. And of course, the United States didn't understand any of the historical context of this. But around 2010, U.S. policymakers said, holy heck, what's China doing? You know, they're challenging us. We're the unilateral sole superpower of the world. How can China do this? And the United States started to think, well, we have to stop China's rise. This is, to use a technical term, obnoxious. Why should the U.S. stop China's rise? But in U.S. thinking, not of the general public, but of course of these elites in the security sector of the U.S., China's rise was an affront. It was impermissible. It violated the idea of U.S. hegemony. It violated the idea of the U.S. Century. And for this reason, the United States, in very clumsy ways, started to try to contain, is the word we have always used, including during the Cold War, contain China, cutting off trade, blocking markets, stopping the export of technology, calling China increasingly an enemy. So we don't use the term partner. We use the term enemy or pace competitor or other weird ideas, in my view, because as an economist, I believe a richer China is a good thing for the United States, not a bad thing. I think I'm happy that China's providing all sorts of new technological solutions, 5G at low cost renewable energy. Great. This is what international trade makes possible. But if you're a zero-sum thinker, like a typical American security strategist, all of China's gains are out of place, inappropriate, a threat to the United States. And that's what we're living through right now. So I try to tell the Americans, calm down. China's not out to take over the United States. It's not going to run the United States. It couldn't even in a million years begin to have a military threat to the United States unless we create the worst possible enemy. And so let's stop creating enemies. Let's cooperate.
But then this story about the rise and fall of China really tells the story of connectivity, that if you open up to the world, if you tend to cooperate, you will be better off. If you close yourself, if you become isolated, your economy will suffer. And yet, we talk about de-risking, we talk about disconnecting, we talk about block mentality, we talk about, the fortress of democracies against the world, and all these kind of concepts which narrow our possibilities to cooperate with the world, to work together on sustainability, to work together on renewable energy, that will enable us to fight poverty and to spread education all around the world. But because of ideological reasons, we're saying no to this, just because, that's the initial reaction. How we can overcome that?
So the United States is exactly cutting itself off from the world right now and thinking that this is somehow clever strategic policy. And when you look at the number of countries in which major American companies are deeply engaged it's really a small number right now. It's surprising. It's the UK. It's a few places in Western Europe, by no means all. Of course, there are American companies a bit everywhere, but not very much. It's surprising. Almost nothing in Africa, by the way, almost nothing at all. A little bit of presence in South Africa. Then in the Western Hemisphere, basically Mexico, and a bit in Brazil, and a little bit in Colombia. But that's basically it. So no deep engagement. None in Africa. Very little, surprisingly little, in Latin America. And in Asia, of course, there is an engagement with China, which they're trying to diminish. There is an engagement with Japan. There's an engagement with Korea. There's an engagement with Australia. There are modest investments in Southeast Asia, for example, in Malaysia. But when I look at the world map, I'm really shocked at how little the U.S. is actively engaged economically. This may sound surprising, but it's a pretty small subset of the world. Now, where the U.S. is actively, I'll say stupidly, engaged is we have 800 overseas military bases in 80 countries. Way overextended, doesn't serve America's interests at all, as far as I'm concerned, except to keep getting us implicated in skirmishes or wars that are only draining the U.S. Of its attention span, its finances, its energies, its political capital. So the U.S. is really strangely losing the self-confidence to be out there positively, and is becoming very defensive, very angry that it's not the number one undisputed country. And of course, we have I'm sorry to say, a president who a bit lives in the past. And in his recent speech, he repeated the tropes, the sayings from the 1990s. We're the indispensable country. The world yearns for global U.S. leadership. The world does not want U.S. leadership. The world wants U.S. cooperation. This is absolutely clear. I haven't heard any other country say, we need your leadership. What they say is, don't veto things in the UN Security Council. Cooperate. Don't put unilateral sanctions in place. Now, this brings me to Europe, because frankly, this is my biggest surprise, because Europe is, of course, part of Eurasia. Europe is so much a trading economy. The openness of European countries is much higher than the United States. Europe cannot thrive without good relations with China, for example. This is clear. And why would Europe want to? Because East-West trade, which goes back more than 2,000 years, has always been central, was central to the Roman Empire. You know, the ladies of the Roman Empire loved Chinese silks. The Chinese Silk Road was not a myth, it was a reality. There was trade between the Han Empire and the Roman Empire going back 2,000 years. And Europe should be the first to say, of course, we have good relations with China. And when China says we have a Belt and Road initiative, which aims to create the physical infrastructure to connect Eurasia, Europe should say, well, we have a global gateway and we'll meet you halfway. You build out from the east towards the west, we'll build out from the west towards the east. We can celebrate in Samarkand, or we can celebrate in Almaty, or we can celebrate in other places. But this should be a joint program of Europe and China. And by the way, in a similar way, Japan and Korea should not be saying, oh, China's an enemy. Japan and Korea and China should be saying, my word, look, if we look at what we have going in Northeast Asia and we cooperate, we're a powerhouse that can provide technology, exports, help to build the infrastructure in Africa and so forth, cooperatively and together. The United States, of course, doesn't want that. The United States is telling Japan, we'll back you up against the enemy across the South China Sea. Nonsense. Japan and China should be cooperating with each other. So this is the mindset change that is needed. And what has surprised me is how weak so much of the European leadership has been. Prime Minister Orban's been the voice of sanity in this, saying, of course, we need interconnectedness. But then you look at the European Commission and you feel it's a little bit like a subunit of NATO. And I think it's a shame, frankly, that NATO and the European Union governance are in the same city. If they were in different cities, maybe the European Union would have an easier time looking after Europe's own interests rather than the purported, and I don't think real, interests of the US, which heads this military alliance. They would understand, European leaders would understand these are two completely different things. And the European Union should represent Europe. And NATO, you know, to the extent that it's even needed anymore, is a very different thing from the European Union.
I think you really cut into the matter of the debates we're having in Europe these days on the future role of Europe in the world, but unfortunately we are out of time. So I have to stop here, but we'll be glad to continue the conversation at the next year's forum. I hope you will be invited and we will be able to look at all these things and all the progress that we made or failed to make.
Well, wonderful.
Professor Sachs.
Thank you. Hope to see you in Budapest soon. Thanks.
Absolutely. You would be most welcome. Thank you very much. And I would also like to thank the audience for attending today. And I hope all these thoughts that we have heard from the professor will help us to better understand the dynamically changing environment that we have to face in the world. Thank you very much and hope to see you at next year's event.
Mr. Ugrozsdy and Mr. Sachs for this exciting conversation. Dear all, I hope that you all agree with me when I say that we had a successful and rewarding 2 days. We had more than 50 speakers from 15 countries who have guided us through the most topical and intriguing questions of finance, economy, geopolitics, infrastructure, technology, connectivity, and education. Despite the difficulties and the challenges of recent times, it is truly delightful that we can welcome more and more guests here in Budapest. In the previous years, the Budapest Eurasia Forum became an international platform where representatives of different segments of the economy and the society can gather to join a forward-looking, innovative, and inclusive mission for Eurasian cooperation. As closing of the forum's program, I now would like to invite Mr. Barnabás Virág, Deputy Governor of the Magyar Nemzeti Bank, to deliver some concluding thoughts and major takeaways. Deputy Governor, the floor is yours.
Dear Excellencies, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Our conference is getting to the end. I hope you enjoyed the event and the very professional discussions we had in the last 2 days. Our aim was to provide a platform for those who are interested in a successful Eurasian future. As a closing thoughts, as a closing remarks, I would like to emphasize 2 very important messages from the introductory remarks we heard yesterday morning. The first from His Excellency Mr. Wu Hongbo, who said, "Without peace, there is no economic development. But without economic development, there is no long-lasting peace." And the other thought is coming from Governor Matocsi, who said Eurasia and sustainability represent the 2 sides of the same coin. So obviously, we are living in a very complex world, facing with unprecedented shocks. We are facing three key challenges: technology, geopolitics, climate change, and of course, here are the issues on the field of finance. We have to find the right answers. I don't want to repeat all of those very clever thoughts I heard in the last 2 days, just to repeat the main messages. First, we need resiliency and stability in our economies. We need innovation and adaptability. The cooperation and connectivity is a pretty important part of our future. And of course, at the top of it all, we need peace. So finally, I would like to thank all of the speakers of the very, very fruitful discussions, the very wise talks we heard in the last 2 days. Of course, I would like to thank the audience, to the several thousands of guests who followed the conference in the last 2 days here in the building of the Central Bank and also through the internet. In this spirit, I would like to sincerely thank all of our speakers for their valuable talks, and thank you all for the participation again. Finally, I would like to also thank to the organizing committee of the Budapest Eurasia Forum for their hard work and outstanding dedication, and every colleague who supported the realization of this inspiring event. Thank you very much. So with this speech, this year event is getting to the end, but of course we are looking forward to meet with you in the next year. So see you all in 2024 here in Budapest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Governor, for the excellent summary. We have reached the end of the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2023. Once again, I thank all of our speakers and participants for sharing their great insights, and of course, our audience for staying with us till the end. If you missed any of the speeches or you would like to rewatch our sessions, visit the Budapest Eurasia Forum website in the upcoming days, as all sessions will be available on demand soon. The website will also include further interesting facts and updates about the forum during the year ahead, so make sure to return regularly. Let me hereby announce that next year we are going to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Magyar Nemzeti Bank, the Central Bank of Hungary, and for that we are planning a number of events. We hope to see you again among our distinguished guests. Dear all, I wish you all a great rest of the day, and I hope we meet again at the 5th Budapest Eurasia Forum in 2024. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.